Hello, everyone, and welcome back into the GSMC Dead Ball Sports Podcast, brought to you as always by the GSMC Sports Network. Before we get into our second segment of today's show, I do want to remind you all that throughout the duration of the show, whilst we are live streaming, if you want to contribute, interact a little bit more, get your opinions, feedback, or input about the show out there, you're very welcome to through the Super Chat, Super Thanks, and Super Stickers features here on YouTube. You can also do it through our website, gsmcpodcast.net. Tips and donations as well are greatly appreciated by all concerned here at the network if you so feel like it, but it just makes our shows that much better. We thank you in advance for whatever you do to promote them. But, without further ado, let's get into a movie we have become all too familiar with over in the AFC. Chiefs-Bills at Arrowhead to decide the AFC Championship. We've seen these quarterbacks play before, one of the most legendary modern rivalries at the QB position. Mahomes, Allen, we know that Allen rules the roost in the regular season, but when the postseason comes around, Patrick Mahomes and his voodoo magic always come out on top. A sterling 3-0 record in the postseason against Josh Allen and his Bills. But this time, it could be very different, even though it's still Arrowhead, it's still Mahomes on the other sideline, and it's still Steve Spagnuolo, one of the best defensive minds when it comes to postseason in NFL history. But let's talk about the hypotheticals here. Let's talk about ways both of these teams can establish their identity on this game, including how Josh Allen can finally get over the hump and how the Chiefs' defense was the biggest X factor in this one as well. Let's talk about the Bills here, right? Because everyone thought that the Bills might take a bit of a step backwards considering all the production they lost from their offense last year. Gone were both Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis before the start of the season, and they went into the season trusting a third-year guy who never been a number one receiver in Khalil Shakir, a rookie in Keon Coleman, and Dalton Kincaid, one of the better tight ends in the league, but still very raw heading into his second year. And then in the backfield, have a guy in James Cook, who I think is one of the most underrated running backs in the league, but certainly not someone you would expect to truly carry the burden of Joe Brady's offensive mindset for this year's team. And then, of course, you bring back Josh Allen, but you also worry now that he had no true number one receiver, how turnovers would affect him. Well, he answered the question throughout the regular season in sterling fashion, and as a result, he might be the first-time MVP everyone thinks he might. He really limited the turnovers, but most importantly, he didn't go looking for the explosive plays. And now he's in the AFC Championship game against a team that used to live on explosive plays, but now are playing very similarly to how the Bills look. So, if you look at this game at face value, these teams match up very, very well. More interestingly so than previous iterations where it could have looked like the Bills, because of talent like Diggs and Davis, could have overcome the Chiefs, but couldn't because, well, it's Patrick Mahomes. But now, it seems like this is a more evenly matched game. Because as Josh Allen has ascended to the throne of perhaps the best QB, perhaps most valuable player in the NFL right now, Mahomes has kind of declined. This has been statistically his worst ever season, but we're in the postseason now. And that's where Patrick Mahomes' status as an elite QB arises. And so that's what makes this game so intriguing, so difficult to pick. But I do think that in terms of ways that both of these teams can win this game, the X factors, so to speak, in these games, the Chiefs' defense, and then ultimately how Allen can look in a more methodical approach against Steve Spagnuolo's defense. Because I feel like the Chiefs' defense is well equipped to stop the run. I love how they mix up guys in the interior, Karlaftis, Jones. I love how they do it. Jamari Connor ultimately being one of those guys who's solid in run support from the secondary. Mike Dana in the middle, I believe, still. But I do think that Josh Allen is going to be fine taking what this defense gives him. Because even if James Cook is bottled up, I really like how guys like Shakir especially occupy the middle of the field and really challenge defenses to tackle very well. And what I mean by that is he's a very nice yak receiver. He can sit in the middle of certain schemes, receive the ball, and then go upfield, unlike many other receivers at the number one spot. He's not necessarily going to burn you like a lot of these superstar elite receivers at the number one spots for their respective teams can, but he is very savvy. And he'll know, that the Chiefs are going to want to light up Josh Allen. They want to slow down Cook and ultimately force him to go deep. But with a receiver like Khalil Shakir, he's so unique at the number one spot that you also have to account for how he creates after the catch. And then on the Bills side of things, going to be a very similar situation as well, because Kelsey is really showing his age in certain areas of his game, but the reason why he's still effective is because he's able to exploit soft coverages, much like what the Bills employ, and create after the catch. So I feel like two huge X factors in this game, outside of, say, the Chiefs' defense and Josh Allen and his backfield, are both Shakir and Kelsey respectively, because they're unique players that test very blitz-heavy, zone-heavy teams and really make them have to play a little bit more disciplined and soundly than usual. So I hope that really helps you understand how this game is a little bit more different than others, where both of these guys were gunslinging the ball down the field. It was back and forth, much like the divisional round game, or was it the championship a couple years ago with the 13 seconds thing. But I do think that this time around, it's going to look a little bit more methodical. And it's going to be a little bit more low scoring than people think, which lead me to believe that special teams as well is going to play a huge role. It's going to be a cold day there at Arrowhead, so wind might not be in the kicker's favors. But I do think that both Butker and Bass are prepared for cold weather moments, prepared for last-second field goal attempts. So I do think that those guys are kind of the underrated X factors in this game, seeing as to how very little could already separate both of these teams. But now let's talk about the quarterbacks and how, depending on your view of the game, they've improved or declined. I don't necessarily feel like, let's start off with Mahomes, that Mahomes has really declined specifically because he's taken what the defense is giving him. I think he's declined because the mindset of this offense was starting to lean before the season's inception towards a more explosive attack, right? You drafted Worthy, Hollywood Brown comes over, you get DeAndre Hopkins mid-season, so you have all these receivers who are very tall, solid downfield threats to balance out what Kelsey can do. So I think the disappointment was that Mahomes really started to prove that he wasn't just going to be a downfield passer. And as a result, I think that this offense really didn't click a lot of ways people think it should have. But ultimately, I'm not necessarily too worried about Mahomes, especially in the postseason, just because of the fact that when he's in the postseason, it doesn't necessarily matter how poorly he plays. He knows that Spagnuolo, yet again, is going to scheme up something to put pressure on the opposing offense and really make this a lot closer than people think. Because in reality, a lot of people probably think that when the Chiefs look as down as they have, that they can get down on their day. That a talented offense on their day can overwhelm the Chiefs. And that's what the Bills did in their regular season meeting. And It's the only loss the Chiefs had where all of their starters played. But now, I just feel like this game is given another opportunity. Now that the Chiefs are in the postseason, they're in the mindset of winning. We want to get this three-peat. They're going to be in the zone, specifically Steve Spagnuolo. And I love what Joe Brady has done with this Bills offense, but it's going to be difficult to go up against this Chiefs defense and expect to get much going if you want to take a more methodical approach in this game. And I think a lot of people might be skeptical about that, but I do think that in this one, it's big plays that could decide it either way. It could be a deep pass or it could be a turnover. And so I think that because neither of these teams want to blink first, that's going to be tentative. We're going to feel each other out, much like, say, a European football match. I don't know why I said that, because we're not talking about that just yet, but you get my idea. But ultimately, I do think that in terms of picking the winner of this one, I gotta go with the Chiefs. It's Arrowhead, it's Mahomes, it's Reed, it's Spagnuolo. We've seen this movie before. And until Josh Allen can prove that he can go on the road, no matter how improved he's looked, no matter how Mahomes-like he's become in order to really help his team out, it's going to be a daunting task to try and employ that methodical approach against this Chiefs team. So I'm going to take the Chiefs in a close one, 24-20, because I do respect the fact that the Bills are going to want to make this as methodical as possible. They're going to want to elongate this game as long as possible. But in the end, I just think that the Chiefs are going to prove that they're more built for this moment at home than the Bills are on the road. So that's my score. But let me know what you think in the comments below, because coming up next, we transition over to college football, lingering with it for a little while longer, going on into next week as well. But talking about the best quarterback situations for 2025 in the SEC. A lot of interesting guys returning, a lot of interesting guys left, but ultimately still one of the premier conferences when it comes to quarterback talent. I'll be right back after this break to discuss it.